Hi everybody, Jorge here, and today I want to share with y'all what I have learned about success over the course of my life and my artistic journey. As television writer Tracy McMillan says in her TED Talk, the places where we have the biggest challenges in life become the places where we have the most to give. And it makes a lot of sense to me because when I listen to the stories and lived experiences of other people, I always find this pattern that it is people who struggle the most with that thing that they're talking about. It is these people that we can learn the most valuable knowledge and understanding from about the things. So for example, if you know that someone struggled with self-love and they tell you their story, it is from this story that you can derive most value when it comes to self-love. People, who had many divorces, it is these people that we can learn the most from about marriage. People who struggled with different aspects of life are actually the people who have the most valuable knowledge and understanding to share with others. So, I am someone who struggled with success a lot in the past, and I'm still struggling a lot with it. And, I still think that I have the authority to talk about it because it is through this struggle that I developed knowledge and understanding that other people these days find useful. And so I just want to share it with y'all, to share it with my YouTube community. Some might guess that, after reading the title of this video, the formula of success, because I'm actually going to give you a real, mathematical formula of success. And so some people might think that, this guy is going to give us the recipe for success. This is going to be kind of universal recipe that anyone can reproduce and they will become instantly successful. Here's the thing. It's BS because there can be no universal recipe for success. Success is defined uniquely for each and every of us, and I will talk about the reason why later. But if you just want this recipe and you just watched this video to this point, you might actually stop watching right now. But this is one thing I really want you to hear, that whenever someone tries to sell you a kind of universal recipe, universal advice, be it in the form of a book, a video, or whatever it is, you can be pretty sure that people are selling you BS. It's of zero value. No, there can be no universal recipe. It just doesn't work that way. Some other people who might be watching this video right now, and if they are not familiar with my work, with my story, if they didn't see my other videos on this channel, they might be thinking, this guy, if he talks about success, he must be someone who made like $1 million in 1 month. Maybe he's a venture capitalist, maybe he's trading bitcoins. It's BS. It's another kind of BS. I've never made $1 million in 1 month. I'm not a venture capitalist, and I'm not actually trading bitcoins. The thing is, if you are someone who made $1 million in 1 month, then I don't think that's really success. That is luck, but not success. And it is not from these kinds of stories that we can learn some valuable, meaningful, and useful information about success. If you just have luck, if someone tells me that they won a lottery, it doesn't mean that after listening to them, I will also win a lottery, right? So, before even starting this conversation, I want to really clarify what I mean when I talk about success, because I know that the definition may be different. And so I really want to clarify so me and y'all could be 100% clear on what it is that I'm referring to as success. So I define success as the positive outcome of the journey where we set to fulfill our most authentic and our highest inner goals. Now, inner goals is the key word here in this definition, because when I talk about success and when I think about success, I'm not talking and thinking about, some external factors, about some societal conditioning, some, criteria of success or recognition by society, by other people. It's not like, I'm not talking about, this kind of norms and expectations that we all have no matter where we live. Like, you're supposed to earn that much money by that age, you're supposed to graduate from college by that age, you're supposed to have that many kids by that age, you're supposed to get married by that age. Like, if you, those external factors are not what defines success for me. Because I used to believe that. I used to believe that if you kind of fulfill these criteria that society tells you make a person successful, then you will be successful. And then I got plenty of reality checks in my life when I saw people, not myself, but other people, who got all the things that society tells us we need to be successful. And, on the surface, on the outside, those people were successful. But on the inside, it turned out that they were miserable, because their inner goals, their real goals, like those goals that were in their hearts, were not really fulfilled, were not really honored, were not really actualized. So that's not the kind of success that I ever want to have in life, kind of externally driven success. It's this kind of success that everybody sees, but I do not feel in my heart. So that's why I say that there can be no universal recipe for success, because our inner goals are different. For each and every one of us, we have different goals in life. Maybe your goal is to have kids. Maybe your goal is to make this career. Maybe your goal, is to go, to moon on a spaceship. Whatever it is. Like, if that goal is here, deep in your heart, then it is the fulfillment of that goal that informs success for you. So there can be no universal recipe. We all have to figure out our own ways and our own journeys towards success. But how then do we talk about success in a way that is constructive, that is relatable, that is powerful, that is no BS? I think we should talk about success deconstructing it. Like deconstructing it into components so that we could see things that get in the way of success. So I have found this kind of framing, this kind of critical perspective to be very useful when we talk about complicated and valuable things in life, like love, empathy, connection, belonging, faith, self-worth. So when I talk to people about love, I'm not kind of talking to them about this is how to do love. Like, I'm a guru, I'm an expert, I'm a teacher, I'm gonna teach you how to do love. No, because it's BS. It doesn't work that way. You can give that kind of advice. You can even sell it. You can write books, or you make a podcast giving people how-tos. But that will not bring about any real positive impact. That will not make real difference in people's lives, because how-tos do not work. They're not effective. What is effective is when we talk not about how to do these things, but what gets in the way of these things. So when I talk to people about love, I talk to them about, here are the things that get in the way of love in a romantic relationship, for example. When I talk to people about self-worth, I talk to them basically about shame and scarcity, those things that get in the way of self-worth. When I talk to people about empathy, in order for that conversation to have a lasting and meaningful positive effect, I talk to people about empathic failure. I talk to people about those processes, those thoughts, those behaviors that corrode empathy and that sabotage empathy. The same thing with faith, the same thing with belonging. And also, that's why I think in order to talk about success in a really powerful and impactful way, we need to deconstruct it into components so we could see what gets in the way of success. Because once we have explored that, we become able to start becoming successful in a whole new way. So, without further ado, what is the formula? What is the formula of success? I have found that success is a product of multiplication of three factors. Number one, talent, multiplied by number two, perseverance, also known as resilience, and multiplied by number 3, luck or randomness. So this is the formula. There you have it. This is kind of mathematical formula. And I don't know if you liked math or not in school. I, for one, loved math. Math was one of those classes where I totally relaxed. It was super easy for me in middle school and high school, first year of college. I really, really regretted that we only had math, the first year of medical school, and then, it just went away. But the thing is, you don't really need to like math or to be good at math in order to understand this formula, because this is kind of metaphorical formula. Of course, we cannot, it is not, some precise formula in terms of precise quantities. We cannot measure precisely amount of talent, the amount of luck, the amount of perseverance, and the amount of success. So it's kind of metaphorical formula. But when you look at this formula in terms of multiplication, and you really kind of start thinking about success as a result of multiplication of these 3 factors, then you start understanding 3 very, very important consequences from this formula, or 3 implications of this formula. And here they are. First, in order to get a certain amount of success, it doesn't matter in which order you put talent, perseverance, and luck. It doesn't really matter. With the same amount of talent, perseverance, and luck, you will get the same amount of success, no matter which comes first, which comes next. It all doesn't matter. You can just, rearrange those things, whatever. Some people say, I think talent is most important. Other people say, I think luck is most important for success. Oh my gosh, when you think, it's a scholastic debate. When you realize this formula, that it's a multiplication, then it doesn't matter if you put talent first, or if you put luck first, or if you put perseverance first. With the same amount of perseverance, luck, and talent, you're going to get the same amount of success, period. It's the law of multiplication. It basically follows from the basic rules of arithmetic. The second implication of this formula is, if at least one of these 3 factors is 0, then the result, success as a result, will also be 0, no matter how big or infinite other factors are. For example, if you have enormous talent, some extraordinary talent, and if you have quite a bit of perseverance, but you had 0 luck, then you will not be successful. The result will be 0. Another example, if you have, quite a bit of talent, and if you have infinite luck, you're just, as lucky as the luckiest guy on earth, but you have 0 perseverance, you will also not become successful. So, that is why multiplication is a more accurate metaphor for success than a sum, because if we talked about a sum of these 3 factors, then one could be 0, but 2 other could kind of compensate for this. But guys, this is multiplication. So if at least one of those factors is 0, others may be infinite. The result will still be 0. And the third implication is, if you know that in your particular case, one of these factors is small, but you still want to get a certain amount of success, then you can compensate it with a surplus of another factor. So for example, if you know that you have very small luck, you have a deficit of luck in your journey, you can compensate for that with a surplus of perseverance, with a surplus of effort. So these are the implications. This is why it is so constructive and effective to think about success this way, as a product of multiplication of these factors. And now that we have seen these 3 factors, I want to talk separately about each of them so that we could see very specifically things that get in the way of success, just looking at these 3 components, at these 3 domains of success. So first, I want to talk about talent. And that's not because I think that talent is the most important. I don't think so. But I want to talk about talent first because talent is the hardest thing to talk about. So, this is really my habit. When I talk to people about something really important and something really difficult, I start talking with the toughest point, with the toughest piece of the conversation. Maybe that's why I piss so many people off. But, I'm not gonna BS here. Talent is the hardest thing to talk about because talent is such a vague concept. It is so difficult to capture and measure. And I do not have 100% certain bulletproof definition of talent for myself. I just think about talent then again, I'm gonna introduce this kind of approximate definition that I have so that you could understand, so that me and you would be all understanding what we're talking about here. What I mean when I say talent. So talent for me is the ability to do a certain thing beautifully. Just as simple as that. And culturally, we are conditioned to think about talent as a kind of innate ability. Some people, particularly when it comes to arts, so some people have talent, for singing. Some people have talent for writing. Some people have talent for kind of painting, and so on and so on. But the thing is, in the majority of cases, it is really impossible to distinguish whether this amazing ability that a person has is innate or acquired, because we are not born knowing how to do many amazing things. When we are born, we don't know how to talk, basically. So we acquire a lot of ability throughout life, and it is really hard to determine whether that ability is innate or acquired. But the thing I know for sure, 100%, is that everybody has talent. Everybody has talent. But not everybody is lucky enough to discover what their real talent is, to discover what that thing is that they're really good at. Especially when people grow up amidst social disadvantage, amidst absence of opportunity or scarcity of opportunity, amidst, these kind of contexts where they cannot try different things, where they cannot try different jobs, different activities. As a kind of counter-argument to that, I can tell you that I know many privileged people who are very, very much privileged compared to me, at least. I met them in medical school, and we continue to socialize and communicate these years. It's been quite a while after we graduated, and our careers, they kind of diverged in very different directions. But we continue to communicate, and I continue to be friends with some of them. And so I know a lot of people who were privileged, meaning that they had a lot of opportunity in their life growing up, like doing sports or doing arts, those opportunities that I didn't have. And now that we are in our late 20s, in our early 30s, some of these people tell me, you know what, Jorge, I don't think I have talent. I have tried this, I have tried that, I have tried many things, and I'm not really good at anything. I don't think I have any talent at all. And, it always kind of really upsets me to hear that, because I tell people, I have to speak truth to bullshit. I have to say, you know what, this just cannot be true. You have not found your talent yet. But it cannot be true that you don't have it. You have to keep looking. You have to keep trying different things, especially if you do not have financial pressures in your life, if your basic human needs are covered and you can choose jobs not because of financial pressures, not because, you have to pay rent because you don't have a roof over your head, but you have a roof over your head, you have food, you have access, to some basic things. So just keep trying different things, because if you of course you have talent, but if you leave that talent unused and undiscovered, it will eat you up from the inside. So please keep looking for it and don't stop. And I say it, of course, from the position of a person who's been in love and who's been making love with creativity for so many years. So I know how dangerous it is to leave our talent and our potential unused it's like it can physically hurt our health. And on the other side of these conversations, these people who are privileged and who had so many opportunity in their lives compared to me, they look at me and they see me doing some things that, doing some things beautifully in a way that really amazes them. And they say, oh, Jorge, you're so kind of multi-talented, You learned a few foreign languages and you learned them almost on your own. You sing beautifully. You write professionally. You cook so well. Like you need to open your own restaurant, your own bakery. You make great cheesecakes. You make great pizza from scratch. You make these cool websites. Just they look more beautiful than websites made by professional agencies. And and when people tell me that I'm kind of multi-talented, I kind of say, do you think this is an innate ability? Yes, I am able to do all the things, and I do them really well. But this is not an innate ability. I learned how to do that. I figured out how to do that. And I figured that out amidst absence of opportunity. Unlike you, I didn't have that opportunity. You had the opportunity to go to foreign languages classes because you had parents who could pay for it. I didn't have that kind of parents. I didn't have that kind of family. I didn't have any money of my own to do that. So I learned the majority of the things that, amaze people these days out of necessity. Because I needed to get those things done in my life, and I had no one I could count on. I think the most obvious example here is cooking. I do cook really well, and I bake really well, I'm a fan of, my favorite cuisine is Italian cuisine, and I make, amazing Italian dishes. But the thing is, how did I learn to cook? How come that I live here in Russia. In this country, it's very rare that men learn how to cook and cook really well. It's kind of female job here. How come that I learned to cook? Well, these days, I look at cooking as a kind of the most accessible way of creativity. I love it. I'm passionate about it, which is really very hard for me as someone who doesn't have a lot of money and who, for the majority of his life, lived in food insecurity. But I love cooking and I still love it. But I learned how to cook not because of my passion, not because, I just wanted to kind of be a super professional chef or I envisioned that as my career. But I learned how to cook out of necessity because I lived with adults growing up who were unreliable. And so my choice was, at the age of 14, my choice was, Jorge, either you learn how to cook on your own or you will walk around hungry all day long. So I learned how to cook basically out of trauma and out of necessity. Another example of that, websites. Yes, I know, these days I know how to make websites, and I know how to make them again from scratch, not from templates like Wix.com or WordPress, no, but I know how to make websites from scratch. I know how to code in HTML and JavaScript and PHP, but I know those things because I learned them, because I had to learn them on my own, because when I finished my book and I understood that I really needed a website for it, I had no money to hire anyone or to delegate this job to an agency, to make a website for my book. I had to figure out how to do that on my own. And I had to figure out how to make a really great website. The website that would be, simple, concise, but at the same time, that would look beautifully, that would be mobile friendly. And so these days I know it, but that's because I learned it. I learned it on my own. No one coached me here. And it's kind of really ironic that these days I may look at some websites made for small businesses by professional agencies, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these websites, aren't these people professionals? These websites, they suck. They suck in terms of design, in terms of copy, in terms of flexibility, in terms of performance. I could have made a better website for them. But then again, it's not because I'm super talented. It's because I just figured out how to do that. And I did that on my own, a complete autodidact. Another example here is with foreign languages. I had almost no foreign languages classes throughout school and even university, even medical school. So I was growing up in a poor neighborhood in Moscow, and I attended public school, so we had only one English class per week, and it was very, very basic. I would have never amounted to this level of proficiency that I have these days if I hadn't studied English on my own. So it's like my English is 95% self-taught, my Spanish is 100% self-taught, just as my basic French and Italian and Greek and Latin. Then again, I studied those languages because I really love it, because I had a passion. I do have passion for foreign languages, but then again, I wasn't born knowing those languages. And when I was a teenager, and my peers, my kids from my class at school, they kind of went out and drank beer and smoked. I sat at home and with the Oxford Dictionary. It was kind of like the Bible for me. It was, the book that was always on my table, and I would just look through it and learn new words and learn grammar. Then again, it would have been very good if I had the money to attend English classes, some really good professional English classes, or Spanish classes, or French classes. But I had no opportunity, so I had to learn that on my own. And so now, when all these people had the money, who had the opportunity, and some of them went to classes, to foreign languages classes, but my level of proficiency is obviously better than theirs, that kind of is a reality check for me, this kind of example that you can acquire that knowledge, understanding, skill on your own. Of course it's difficult, of course it's long, of course it's arduous, but you can do it on your own if you have enough motivation. And I had motivation, like kind of necessity for me to learn foreign languages was that, first of all, I felt that here in Russia, the culture was absolutely foreign to me. I couldn't identify with it on no level. So just in order to understand books and songs and movies, I started learning foreign languages, because Hispanic music, Spanish and Latin American music was the kind of my home. It was something that really resonated with my heart. So this is how I started learning Spanish. This is how, I started learning this foreign language. Then again, I understood how much learning foreign languages could expand my horizons and just, open opportunities in my life that could not be opened in different ways. So I realized necessity at that early age, and so I learned that. I learned music. I learned how to play the piano, and how to write music, and how to mix music, and arrange music, and how to sing. All of that on my own. My parents refused, when I discovered my talent for music, my parents refused to enroll me to a musical school. So then again, now that I'm at my age and I'm doing all those things really well, yes, this is the kind of talent, quote unquote, but this talent has been a product of my sustained effort exerted amidst absence of opportunity. And, I have evidence of that, of this principle, that talent doesn't really have to be innate, but it can be acquired, it can be mastered over the years. When I think about flip turns, so what are flip turns? Swimming was another thing that I was really good at. I think really this is where I did have some innate abilities. So I went to my swimming class when I was in elementary school, maybe it was first grade. But, there was a half a year of those classes, and the coach was like, Jorge, you gotta work hard, and you gotta pursue this as a career. Like, you can actually be a professional athlete. You don't throw things like that around. And, I could see that, actually, that I did so much better than other kids in that class. And I loved swimming. And of course, I would love to continue going to those classes, but I was growing up in a dysfunctional family, and my parents didn't think it was a good idea, a good, place to invest their money. Like my talents, my athletic abilities or my creative abilities, kind of swimming classes or, music school, no, that wasn't good enough, in their opinion. And of course, at that age, I didn't have my own money. And of course, they didn't give a shit about the fact that I loved music or that I loved swimming. Whatever I loved, they didn't, never, like, my feelings were never honored. This was a dysfunctional family. There was lack of empathy there, always. So, I had to leave those classes because my parents refused to pay for them. And I only returned to swimming in my college years, in medical school. But then after, such a long kind of interruption, I returned to swimming and I started to regain those skills, which is hard, but it was, I think, maybe in 1 month I was really, very kind of natural in the water again. When I went to swimming workouts in college, those workouts had to be performed without a coach. We didn't have a coach here. I just had, a swimming pool that I could attend and, work out, whatever way I would like to. So the thing that I noticed in those years was that, I really swam well. It was really easy for me to swim like different styles. Front crawl, breaststroke, even dolphin kicks. But I really sucked at flip turns. So what are flip turns? Flip turns are this kind of acrobatic maneuvers. So when you swim and you approach the wall of the swimming pool, so here's the wall, and you swim, you approach this wall, then you can either stop and touch the wall and then turn around and swim back. But this is not fast enough. When you're a competitive swimmer, this is not fast enough. So instead what you do is you kind of approach the wall and then you perform this acrobatic maneuver underwater. So you curl upside down and then you swim back and then you kind of flip underwater and then you swim back to the surface. So I sucked at flip turns. I tried doing them and it never really worked out well. So I could have thought, you know what? I have a talent for swimming, but I don't have talent for flip turns. So I'm not doing flip turns. I'm not going to do flip turns. I'm not going to kind of participate in any competition. So why should I do flip turns? But then it was kind of a challenge for me. Like, can I master this? Can I really master this? Can I really try to do this on my own? And as hard as it is, as difficult as it is, really master it? And so I started trying to do flip turns on my own. It was, kind of a must. So every time I approached a wall, I wouldn't stop and touch. No, but I would try to do a flip turn, however messy it turned out. And let me tell you that within half a year, I learned how to do flip turns. Even though I thought I didn't have talent for flip turns, but I started to do them really well. So this was a reality check, another reality check in my life, that the ability to do a certain thing well doesn't have to be innate. It can be acquired. So if acquiring it is difficult and hard, there's nothing wrong with that. You can still acquire it. So coming back to talent, we do need talent, the ability to do things beautifully. In order to be successful, we do need that. But it doesn't matter whether that talent is innate or acquired. It can be a product of sustained effort. But there is one important thing that I want to really highlight. So if you have a big dream here within your heart and you're doubting yourself, especially if it's a creative dream, and you think like, am I talented enough? Am I talented enough to write a book? Am I talented enough to start a different career? Am I talented enough to start, to go to dancing classes at my age? Well, here's the thing I can tell you. If that dream stays here with you in your heart for years and years and years, then you do have talent. You do have enough talent to make this dream come true, to make it happen. Because you wouldn't have had that dream if you didn't have, it doesn't work that way. You wouldn't have that dream if you didn't have what it takes within you to make that dream happen. This is the potential inside of you, and it begs to be actualized. And time is the best indicator here, because if it were just a fancy, just a whim, then it would disappear, pretty soon. Let me tell you, when I was a teenager, when I was in high school, pretty much everybody I knew told me, oh, I want to be an actor, I want to be a singer, I want to be like a performance artist. But for those people, it evaporated in 2 or 3 months. And for me, it was serious. Because I already at that age realized that music was the love of my life. So, and it never went away. Because it is here, it is serious, it is something real, something truthful, something powerful that is here within my heart. And so, as it turns out, I do have enough talent. But, of course, I doubted myself a lot. And I know that we actually doubt ourselves when it comes to our most precious gifts. Those gifts that can actually make most difference in the world, that can make us feel most fulfilled and happiest, are the gifts that we are most vulnerable to put out. Absolutely. So, if, for example, if I could, these days, if I could just turn things around, come back into my past, and if I theoretically had the power to change my circumstances, so if I, could change the family that I grew up in, and I would be still the same person, with the same kind of talent for swimming, and if I could pursue an athletic career, if I had that opportunity that I didn't have, now I realize that I still wouldn't do it. No, because I love swimming, and I obviously have talent for swimming, but swimming doesn't make me feel vulnerable. As vulnerable as music makes me feel. So, this is the thing. Whatever makes you feel most vulnerable is the way to go in your life. This is how you choose your career. This is how you choose your main journey. And the sooner you realize what it is that makes you feel most vulnerable, the better it is. Because, those are the things that can make most difference in the world. The things that we feel most vulnerable putting out. So if you have this kind of dream and this kind of gift and this vulnerability about the gift staying with you for long enough, just stop worrying whether you have enough talent or not. I'll bet you do. This is the good news. And the bad news is, just because you have enough talent doesn't mean you're gonna be successful. Because talent is just one thing, one factor that, informs success. There are 2 other multipliers as well. And the second one is perseverance. So, what is perseverance? Perseverance is basically the ability to not give up in the face of failure or setbacks. It is, the ability to not get knocked off your journey, off your path by setbacks, failures, or even trauma. So, when I think about perseverance, one thing that comes to mind for me is hope. And here I mean hope as a cognitive process. Not hope, as an emotion, as a kind of a fleeting emotion. No, but hope as a cognitive process. Because, Richard Snyder, a researcher, he was, I'm not sure if I remember it correctly, but I think he was a clinical psychologist, and so they conducted this research on people who were most hopeful. So, in clinical psychology, they have measures, some tools to measure quantitatively how hopeful you are, for example, or how resilient you are. And so he studied people who were most hopeful in order to understand, to deconstruct hope and understand what hope really is. And so it turned out that hope is a cognitive process. It is, the way of thinking, basically, that consists of 3 components: goals, pathways, and agency. So goals is, what does it mean? People who are most hopeful have the ability to set specific, very concrete goals. So, that's why it is so important for perseverance, because If you go on this journey towards success, you should have very concrete, very clear goals in your mind. It's not like, I just want to, have more money, I want to be more comfortable, I want to have, more kind of flexible schedule. No, you need to be very, very specific about what it is that you want. And those goals need to be also observable and measurable. So, you could actually understand whether you are making any progress towards them or not. This is the first piece of hope. The second piece of hope is pathways. Very important. So pathways means that if one path to your goal didn't work out, you don't give up on that goal, but you look for alternative pathways towards the same goal. So pathways means that your goals stay the same, but you just keep looking for multiple pathways, for infinite pathways in order to reach that goal. And you don't give up if 1, 2, 3, or 1,000,000 pathways didn't work out. You keep looking for new pathways with your goals staying the same. And the third component, agency, means that you believe that you are capable of doing that you are capable of affecting change in your life, that you are the agent of change and the administrator of your own journey. So these three things, goals, pathways, and agency, they inform hope. And they also, for me, they inform perseverance. Another metaphor, that comes to mind for me when I think about perseverance is about staying in the arena. So this is the quote, The Man in the Arena, the quote by Theodore Roosevelt that I first read in Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly. So she used that quote in the beginning of her book because that quote resonates perfectly with what Brene found in her research about courage and vulnerability. So here it goes. It's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out where the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred with sweat and blood and dust, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, who has great devotions and great enthusiasms, who spends himself on a worthy cause, who at the end, if he succeeds, knows the triumph of high achievement, and at the worst, if he fails, at least fails daring greatly. So when I read the quote, I realized, oh my gosh, this quote kind of, it had summarized my life. I didn't have the words to put it this astutely as Teddy Roosevelt had put it, but the thing is, when you walk out in the arena with your gifts, with your talents, with your story, and you come out in the arena and you say, this is me, this is my story, these are my gifts, this is the thing I'm doing, you can never control the outcome. That's the thing. Because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if the arena is going to kind of give you cheers, if you're going to receive an ovation, or maybe the world will ignore you. Maybe you will just triple over and fall flat on your face. Maybe people will hurl rotten tomatoes your way. And let me tell you, what I have seen in my creative journey is that people who throw rotten tomatoes, all this kind of hate and vitriol and negative feedback that is absolutely not constructive, are the people who are in the cheap seats. So they are the people who never venture out in the arena, and that's why they never get their ass kicked. So you really don't need to take it close to your heart, because it comes from the cheap seats. This kind of feedback, it comes from the cheap seats. But when that happens, when people walk out in the arena with courage and vulnerability, dropping off all armor and just exposing themselves, showing the world who they truly are and what they're really doing, their real dreams, their real gifts, then this may happen. The world may ignore you. You can fall flat on your face. You can face a lot of vitriol. And many people, when that happens, they walk out of the arena with shame and scarcity, making up stories about themselves. They just walk out and regret that they had walked in the first place. And, they spend the rest of their lives away from the arena. But perseverance means that when such shit happens to you in the arena, you say, you kind of get up, dust yourself off, and just say, you know what, I'm going to live. I'm going to stay. Because I belong here. This is my place. The arena is my place. So I'm going to stay here. And I'm going to keep telling my story. I'm going to keep doing my thing. And I'm going to be here until the last moment. Which, in my particular case, is until death. Like, for sure. Because me and my creativity are married, until death sets us apart. And this is not just a poetic metaphor. So, as many people might have thought right now, because, I have lived it. I have lived this kind of perseverance where I basically had to stay in the arena and to keep doing my thing until death. Well, while I knew that death was actually approaching me. So I had to kind of leave that level of perseverance with my book. Some of you might know this story from my other videos. For those of you who don't know, I was finishing my book, my novel, Souls of Silence, which is a novel, addressing intersectional social justice. It addresses many globally relevant social issues. So I was finishing this book at the bottom of clinical depression. Terminal, multi-drug resistant clinical depression. 9 months of daily suicidal ideation. That's how I lived. And all that depression and this kind of condition happened to me because of multiple trauma happening in my life at that point. It was the toughest time of my life. All those traumatic circumstances were beyond my power. There was, no way I could improve anything. There was no way I could get myself out of those circumstances. So, I kept writing that book, even though I no longer had any inspiration. Unlike I had in the beginning of the writing, but I had to keep writing that book and to finish that book at the bottom of clinical depression. And that was really a kind of opportunity that life gave me to test my perseverance, to kind of the opportunity to develop my perseverance skills, to kind of test whether I'm in business when it comes to creativity. Because, this creative idea of a book, it came to me, but it had come to me during the time of my life that was not traumatic. It was the time of my life when I was happy and joyful. It was around the time when I first came to Spain, the country where I felt true belonging. So it was the happiest time of my life. But then things got much worse, and I got this whole major depression story happening. There was total multi-drug resistance. And so I was feeling like a complete, useless, worthless, powerless piece of shit during those months. And the only thing in my mind was, I want to off myself. There is no drugs help me. I see no way out of this depression. Nothing can help me. The only thing to put an end to this interminable suffering is to off myself. And it turns out these days when people read my novel, especially the final part of it, and they kind of point me towards a certain passage or a certain chapter, and they say, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful, this is so powerful. I remember that I wrote this chapter or that passage on a day where I felt most miserable. On the day where I felt like, like death was basically staring me in the face. Where on the days where I thought that I just didn't have any talent at all, that I was worthless. And these passages turn out to be beautiful and powerful. This is how people react. And when I share with people what I felt when I wrote that, they say, you know what, Jorge, that's because of your talent as a storyteller. So depression could destroy your self-worth, but your talent, it was, indestructible. And I kind of take that with a grain of salt. I don't know if people are just blowing smoke up my ass, but I know for sure that my book was finished. It saw, it was finally brought into life, not because of my talent, as small or as big as I had, but it was brought into life because of my perseverance. Because during all those months, I didn't follow the messaging of depression. The message just, off yourself, Jorge, off yourself. Like, don't you have enough evidence about how much God hates you? Like, you have lived a childhood of trauma, an adolescence of trauma, and now in your adulthood, things turn out even worse for you. So don't you see that God hates you? Don't you see that destiny conspired against you? Just off yourself at last. Because there were, new trauma coming from everywhere, new traumatic circumstances. But I didn't follow that messaging. I didn't follow it. I stayed faithful to my creativity, into the idea that had come to my mind during my first trip in Spain. Because, again, that book, it had social relevance. I knew that it really could make a positive impact because it addressed 4 globally relevant social issues: homophobia, medical malpractice, mental health stigma, corruption, immigration also. So it could contribute to those important conversations and make an impact, a positive impact on thousands of lives. So that was kind of opportunity that life gave me to master my perseverance as a component of success. And then, after finishing that book, I had an opportunity to take my perseverance skills to the next level. So here's how it happened. After I finished that book, I started networking. I had to reach out to people in the creative industry in America, particularly who could help me put this work on an appropriate platform, on the platform where it could actually serve those people it was supposed to serve. And so on social media, I looked for and then reached out to people who portrayed themselves as social equality champions, as, social justice advocates, as empathy gurus, like all those people who I had every reason to believe were my allies. And, over almost 4 years now, it's been, maybe about 100 people. And with some of them, the relationships went further. With some of them, they ended really quick. But the thing is that the invariable outcome of those relationships, where I needed to get help and support from people who portrayed themselves as sharing my values, the only outcome I got was abuse, emotional abuse, gaslighting, cowardice, hypocrisy. So all that shit, I never got help. I never got support. I was treated like garbage by all of them. And, it's not that those people whose help I asked with this project were strong and I was weak. It's not that I became a victim of abuse and gaslighting because I was weak, because I did something wrong in those relationships, but because I was at disadvantage and those people were at privilege. Because I was a guy stuck here in Russia, a guy who couldn't get out of poverty because of the economic situation in his country, no matter that he had a university education, years of clinical experience, a degree, diligence, intelligence, and all those things. I was still stuck here in a third world country, trapped in poverty, trapped amidst social disadvantage, socioeconomic disadvantage. And those people were upper middle class folks, in America, rubbing shoulders with American celebrities. Of course, I had a lot of money. Of course, I, went traveling to luxury resorts all over the year, all the while I was here living in food insecurity. So it is those random circumstances of our lives that were privileged for them and disadvantaged for me that created these unhealthy dynamics of power in these relationships. And let me tell you, when we were adults after all. So some people might think, privilege, it only matters when you're a kid, but it doesn't matter when you're an adult. No, it matters always. Because when I approached those people and I began conversations with them, and I tried to set some healthy boundaries, some healthy framing, to interact with them from a position of equality. From the position, I'm asking for your help, but this work is valuable. It deserves your help. And basically, what was the kind of help that I needed? I just needed them to put me in contact with those people they had access to, because I couldn't access those people directly. So that was I didn't ask them to give me money to basically this kind of help that they could give me was 100% based on their privilege. But when I try to interact with them from a position of equality and dignity, not blowing smoke up their asses, even though I was obviously from a third world country, they wouldn't accept that. No, they wouldn't accept that. Right off the bat, when they learned where I was from, even though I spoke English with a little accent, they learned that I was from Russia. They learned that I wasn't upper middle class unlike them. So they took advantage of this objective disparity of power and privilege between me and them. And that disparity was created by random circumstances. So this leads me to the last piece of success, which is luck or randomness. It's really hard to talk about luck to Americans because America as a culture is, it heavily relies on the myth of meritocracy. This kind of notion that whatever we end up with in life is what we have wanted, what we have worked for, and what we have deserved. So this kind of simplistic BS is this kind of BS that absolutely doesn't do justice to the reality of things. It is so deeply ingrained in the American culture and American mindsets that successful American people, when they tell their stories of success, we can hear a lot these days, especially on social media, the majority of those people deny the role of success in deny the role of luck in their stories of success completely. Because, they're Americans. They believe in meritocracy. They believe that if they have this success, they deserve it 100%. So they deny the role of randomness, the role of luck in their success, in personal lives, in their success, in their careers. They always go life may not start fair, but it always ends fair. No! It fucking doesn't end fair. It may not start fair and not end fair as well. And if in your particular case, it ended well, if you came from disadvantage, but you actually achieved a lot of success, it doesn't mean that this is how life works. It doesn't mean that this is how things work for everybody. It doesn't mean that your story of success is reproducible. So these people, they fail to see the role of luck in success as a product. They only see the two factors, talent and perseverance. That they talk about perseverance, they show their talent, but they completely dismiss the role of luck. And that is, by the way, the first function of privilege. When you have some random, unearned advantage, you can walk through life in blissful ignorance of that and in complete denial of that. So, as long as you're critically aware and you're really honest, there's no denying that success depends a lot on randomness. including privilege. Privilege being just a set of random advantages that we have in life. And so, of course, in America, there are now conversations going on about race and sexuality and class and, all those things that inform privilege and disadvantage. But it still looks like there is one thing that all Americans, not all, but the majority of Americans are oblivious to: access to economic opportunity that they all have, no matter their race, no matter their class, no matter their gender, no matter their sexual orientation. Like, when you live in a developed country, you have access to work in a big economy. And look, compare that to what happens to people like me who are in third world countries. I live in Russia. I'm a doctor. I have a university degree. And if I work part-time, I will get a salary of about $100 per month. If I work full-time, I will get a salary about $400 per month. So that sound livable to you. And this is the window of economic opportunity that exists here. So in third world countries, you have very low glass ceiling when it comes to career, to financial improvement. And let me tell you, even if medicine here, like healthcare here, is a publicly funded industry, it's plagued by underfunding and corruption. So if I just live clinical practice and go work for, for example, a private pharma company, okay, I will be better financially, but I will be getting, around $1,000 per month. But there's absolutely no way that I can be making more than $15,000 a year in this country. No matter my university education, no matter, my effort, no matter my talent, it all doesn't matter. This is the size of economic opportunity that exists in this country. And this is poverty. Like, let's call it what it is. This is poverty. This is nowhere near middle class. And so Americans and other Westerners show little awareness of that fact when they tell their stories of success to the world, which I believe they tell the stories with good intention because they want to empower people, they want to inspire people, they want people around the globe to be successful, but they show little awareness of the fact that people around the world do not have access to this amount of economic opportunity that people in America have. So, these kind of self-help books, motivational videos, like motivational coaches, as long as there are Americans or Westerners in general, their talk is predicated on Western middle-class life experience. So it's of no use to people who have a lot of talent, a lot of resilience, but are just stuck in third world countries like me, or even born in developed countries, but born into poverty or born into physical disability or some major aspect of disadvantage. So randomness, luck, plays a huge role in success. And the more people deny it, the bigger role it must have played in their individual case. For me as an artist, luck, like what it is, in order to be specific, what is luck here? Luck is about meeting the right people. Just simple as it is. And I have had zero luck over the last 4 years of working with the project of my book. No matter how great my book was, no matter how much evidence and how much research I had under my belt to back up its social relevance and its innovative concept, no matter, the artistic value of that work, this project has not been successful so far because I haven't met the right person. And that's a lottery. But the less privileged you are, the smaller chance you get in that lottery. So, I get regularly reminded of this truth, of this reality that luck has been my main obstacle in this journey. It's not talent, it's not lack of talent, it's not lack of perseverance, but it's luck. It's just a deficit of luck because regularly people reach out to me and tell me about my book. Just the other day, maybe this week or 1.5 weeks ago, a girl reached out to me on Instagram and she said, "Jorge, oh my God, I just read the synopsis of your book on your website. And it shook me to my heart's core. I cried all night long. This story, it was brutal and it was beautiful. Like, how can it be that a book like that is not out yet? It could make an amazing movie. It could be an award-winning movie." And so, we started chatting with her, and then I looked for her Instagram page, and so she's an American. She's a Christian, visibly Catholic. She's straight. There are pictures with her husband and her kids. And so when that kind of person cries all night long after reading a story of love of two men, which is my book, and she says that this story is beautiful, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Like, it's no joke. When a person like that, when a person who is very likely to be a homophobe does that, and she reads that, and she gets that shaken, that impressed, that moved, it's a big deal. And this is why it is in these moments that I understand that I was right when I wrote that book from a straight person's perspective, and I addressed it to straight people. Like, straight people are my audience with this book. And it works. So storytelling works. I wrote this book with the assumption that joy, love, belonging, connection, all those things work the same between gay people and straight people. So I could basically transmit the intensity of feelings and the vulnerability and the beauty and the brutality of all that story with its trauma and depression, to people who are straight, to people who could never relate circumstantially to what happened to my protagonists. But it turned out that I told the story in a way that they could relate emotionally, and it shook them emotionally. So this kind of connection happens. And that's because this girl, she just took the trouble to read the synopsis of my book, and I know, because this happens so many times. People come to my Instagram page, they like my quotes, they like my writings, they like my poetry, and then they go to my website and they see that I have a book, and they say, oh, let's read a synopsis. So she might not have expected that it's a story of love of two men, but she found it and she read it and she got shaking. She just took the trouble to read the synopsis. 20 minutes. Unlike all those privileged assholes that I reached out to over these 4 years, who call themselves my friends and my allies, those assholes never even took the trouble to read the synopsis in order to see the value and the power of that story. And let me tell you, when I talk about my book and how good it is, it's not because I'm narcissistic. I do not equate my value or my value as an artist to the value of this work. Those are not the same. It was just this divine idea that made itself manifest through me as a human collaborator. So I do believe that all creative ideas have, a divine origin. And this idea came to my mind when I was in Spain, during my first trip in Spain. That's trip that was totally life-altering. And so this idea came to me, and I stayed faithful to it. I was perseverant enough to stay faithful to it, and so this book was finally born. And it's not just once or twice that I got such reviews from people, but I've seen people literally cry when I recounted them the plot of this book. This is how powerful this story is. I tell them the plot of this book, and I start crying, whether I like it or not, and other people also start crying. This is how connection happens. This is the power of art. Because what better than art can bring you closer to the people you believe you hate and show you their humanity in such a frustrating way that your hate is defeated at its core. What better than art can speak truth to bullshit? So, the way people react to the story up to this day continues to give me evidence about its value and about the kind of difference that it could make in the world if it were finally out, if it were finally put on the appropriate platform. And then again, just because Souls of Silence is really a great and potentially impactful novel, I do not deem myself a great writer. I don't deem myself a writer at all. I don't want a career as a writer, sure as hell. I'm a musician, I'm a performing artist. It was just this awesome, phenomenal idea that came to my mind. And I don't know why it came to me. I think, it could have come to someone else, to some middle class, American, who could write as a hobby, in nights, without all this kind of trauma and all this drama. But for some reason, this book came to me. And I decided to collaborate. I just looked at this idea and I was, oh my gosh, you're beautiful. And I want to be with you. I love you. I want to make love with you. So I decided to make love with it. I decided to collaborate with it. And this book was born as a baby. I used my storytelling talent and my perseverance to make sure that this story is brought into life in all its glory and beauty, so it can eventually serve the people that it can serve. LGBT people, mental health patients, victims of medical malpractice, people whose lives and careers are ruined by systemic corruption, immigrants. So, absence of luck, a deficit of luck, meaning meeting the right people, doesn't stop me from continuing to seek success for this project. Because I know that it has value and it can make a difference in the world. So, concluding this conversation, I just encourage y'all to practice critical awareness when you think about your success in life or lack thereof. And also when you hear about someone else's stories of success. Remember about talent, luck, perseverance, and how they all come into play and how they all are equally important. And remember how off base it is to estimate any of those multipliers. When you see the amount of success as a product, but you have no idea how big or small other multipliers have been for that particular person. Finally, I want to mention again this quote that Brene Brown used in Daring Greatly. This is Teddy Roosevelt's quote about the man in the arena. Because I realized that real success is not about winning or losing. Real success is about showing up in the arena, telling the world who you are, telling your story with your whole heart, speaking your truth, showing the world your gifts and your dreams, doing all of that with full knowledge that you cannot control the outcome, and most importantly, staying in the arena when you fail. And I'm not saying that staying in the arena and failing your entire life will make you happy. No, probably it won't. I'm not happy because I've only known failure so far. But then we've got to remember about the only guarantee that we all have in life, and that is death. The only thing we can be 100% certain about is that we're here for a limited time. We don't know how big or small that time is, but it's a limited time. So this truth I realized at the ripe old age of 25, 4 years before discovering the Man in the Arena quote and the work of Brene Brown, is that the worst thing is not to come to the end of our lives realizing that we have only known failure in the arena, that we've never got what we deserve, that we've never been appreciated for who we are. That sucks, that's horrible, but that's not the worst thing. The worst thing is to come to the end of our lives realizing that we stayed away from the arena, that we hid out, that we didn't show up when we had great ideas, great stories, and great experiences to bring to the table and share with the world, that we avoided speaking our truth and bringing forth our most precious gifts because we didn't know how the world would respond, that we just wasted all our time here on earth, being trapped as characters in the stories written by someone else, instead of owning those stories and becoming their authors. So, if you want to be successful, remember that in the formula of success, you cannot control most of the variables. The only thing you can control, the only parameter you can control, is whether you show up with your gifts and whether you stay in the arena when things don't turn out in your favor. So, as Oprah Winfrey would probably say it, in order to make success happen, first, don't worry about your talent. Your dream is in itself the proof that you have enough talent. And second, put forward as much perseverance as you possibly can. And then, just let it happen. So I do hope you take this story on a positive note. As always, if you have comments or questions, do leave them below. I would love to have a conversation with y'all. And also, if you find this video insightful, inspiring, and helpful, feel free to share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time on Jorge's YouTube channel. Show up, be brave with your life, keep telling the truth, and stay curious. Take care, guys. Bye.